Yeah. Well, Barbara mentioned she really appreciates pictures of infrastructure we actually own. So I decided to change my backdrop to be a tank.
But did you check it out with Dawn first to make sure it's a good tank?
Well, the outside's good. Dawn?
It looks good.
And we know we own it.
Good. I noticed that. And we own it.
Yep.
And we own it proudly.
Yeah.
That's the Chaparral tank. Rebuilt in
Very
about 2005, I guess.
Sounds about right.
I think that's a 600,000 gallon tank or million gallon. I forget now.
It might be 1 million, Dawn, because it's a 32 footer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. This is Melissa. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. We are ready to go.
Great. Okay, let me see if I don't know if Corey was able to get a little flag, but that's okay.
No, we could do it.
All right, so I'm sorry.
We can do it.
Great. Well, all right, let's, oh, good, thank you. I'd like to call the special board meeting to order on May 6th at 9 a.m. And Melissa, would you please do the roll call?
Okay. Director Balin?
Here.
Director Boatwright?
Here.
Director Kern?
Here.
Director Murphy?
Here.
Director Regan?
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And at this point, let's recite the pledge and we can all, let's see, Corey, do you have a flag?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start sharing it now if you like.
Okay, and everybody's welcome to join me, or you can put yourself on mute either way. And I'll start the pledge shortly.
I think you still there, Director Bailey?
Thank you. Okay, I'll begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome.
Okay, and thank you, everyone. So with that, I'll go ahead and open the public forum. We would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting.
It looks like we just lost Director Bailey. Oh, no, she's there. Looks like she might have a bad connection on her side.
I do. And I don't know how much of that you caught. And I keep getting a little message that says my connection is stable. And so I may have to defer when we get into the bulk of the meeting, especially if I'm reading the introductory comments. But I'll finish. So let's see, where was I? The public comment will be limited to 5 minutes or depending on the number of persons.
Hey Barb, if you turn your video off, your audio will come through clearly.
Okay, that my connection is not reliable this morning. So let's open the public forum. Corey, is there any member wishing to, of the public wishing to speak?
Not that's indicating at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you. And again, I apologize for my unstable connection here. All right, let's move on then to regular business. Melissa, could you read our item for today?
Okay, item number 1, board to discuss, identify, and prioritize the legislative advocacy multi-benefit objectives, health and safety, culture and enrichment, environment, and economy for 2021.
Okay.
Seeing
Still
that,
keeping in and out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
President Balin, this is Abby. I was going to jump in and introduce the item if you think that would be helpful.
I was just going to ask you to please introduce the item and please introduce Lisa for us. Thank you,
Okay.
Abby.
Okay, excellent. So good morning, members of the board and members of the public that are joining us. This morning, we have with us Lisa Butler from Stantec. Lisa was asked to join this meeting or to facilitate this meeting with respect to the TUD priorities that were discussed at its April 8th special board meeting with our legislative advocates on the state and federal sides with Van S. Feldman and California advocates. At that time during that meeting, the board reviewed a list of priorities that from staff that they had brought forward to the advocates, that hearing from the board members over the course of the last several months and years. And the board had a robust discussion about those items at that time and asked that we follow up with that meeting with another session to really drill down into the priorities and both to set the priorities in place as well as add any additional priorities that they felt like were necessary. So we have Lisa Butler here. She's an executive facilitator with Stantec, as I mentioned. She specializes in helping organizations and communities reach decisions and create effective public policy. She's been an associate director of the Sacramento State University Center for Collaborative Policy and has moved to a global design and engineering firm. So she helps her clients at Stantec with strategic thinking, collaborative policy, and water resources and other planning. So she has some other experience that if you'd like to share, you're welcome to, Lisa, but welcome to the meeting. Thank you for being here, and I'll hand it over to you at this time.
Thank you. Right, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So just to start, for a little bit of background, I've been working in water for about 20 years. And most recently, I've been spent most of my time working on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So what we're going to cover today is go through your legislative priorities, also provide some general direction to staff in terms of where you'd like to put emphasis. And the goal for today really is to walk out with some lists and things that will inform both your advocacy team and your technical teams, your staff teams. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I had an opportunity to send out this to get the sent to the board, this particular slide set. Abby, was that something we were able to post?
It was sent to the board just prior to the meeting, about 20 minutes prior to the meeting.
Okay, great.
And we'll post it on our website.
Oh, that'd be great for the people that are following along. Okay, just want to check if anybody else had any other goals other than the ones that I just described in terms of what we need to get done today. Okay, I'll go ahead and move down to the order of what we're going to do today. So the primary thing we're going to look at 3 parts. The first one is actually your criteria, the way that you're selecting your projects, the way you do prioritization. After we get a good sense of that, we'll move on and talk about your multi-benefit development. That was in the meeting packet that came out and was posted with the agenda. And from there, we'll go in and balance the prioritization criteria and the multi-benefit development to come up with the priorities that you can use for direction to your teams. So we're going to go ahead and start with your prioritization criteria. This is a schematic that's been used by your staff team in developing their project priorities. So what I wanted to do was walk through this with you a little bit, see if it all makes sense. I'm hoping this is ringing a bell for everybody. And if not, we can spend more time on different parts of it. But as the staff team looks at how they prioritize things, this is the way they look at it. And there are kind of 4 categories of things that drive how things get put into the queue to get done. And this comes from the capital improvement planning. The first one is tier 1 mandatory. And these include all the things that are regulatory, statutory directed, things that you really don't have any particular control over. They're just things you have to do, or you don't get to be a utility district without getting in a lot of trouble. The next thing they look at is safety. And when you have health and safety issue, obviously that's not something that is particularly negotiable. One of the things that made it into the tier 1 mandatory, this is where you have funding secured and you have obligations contractually to develop and to proceed with whatever the project is. And then you have an issue of infrastructure that's going to fail. And that's something that puts everybody at a lot of risk. So I'm going to pause. If you don't mind, Eric, I'm going to call on you, Eric Johnson. And is there anything else you'd like to say about the tier 1?
No, the only thing I would add is that funding secured you addressed. One of the subsets of that would be like we have collaborative arrangements with the county when they are doing a project and there's a utility relocation associated with that, then we're obligated to meet their timeframes for their project. And so that falls under almost kind of under funding secured. It's almost like it's just an obligation we have to our partner agencies.
Okay, great. And then Dawn, did you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I could. So just, I know this board has heard me say this in past years. So sometimes, like Eric was talking about, that funding secured, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily align with our top priorities, but you know, we're good partners with the county or whoever, and we just kind of jump in there and do what we have to do. But just understand that sometimes it jumps in front of some of our higher priority projects.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times when I've been working with other agencies, there's been a lot that's gone on in terms of opportunistic. So something comes along and you just kind of can't pass it up. Does that fall into this category, or does it fall into the next one or a different place?
Speaking for me, I think it falls in this category, yes.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions from the board about tier 1? It seems fairly straightforward. Okay.
No questions.
Great, thank you. Let's go to the next one then. The next one is tier 2 necessary. And these are things that are done for operational efficiency, end of life replacement. So this is before something fails, but it's at that point where you're better safe to take care of it. And then a partner developer, things where if it's not done, the developer won't be able to proceed. And this sounds like it's similar to your funding secured, Dawn. So I'll go ahead and pause. And if you don't mind starting on this one, and then I'll ask Eric to add to it.
Well, I'm not sure I can think of an example. Maybe Eric can go first here on this one, and I can follow
Okay.
up with.
Great. Thank you. Eric?
Yes, they are similar to what I described. I guess under this one is more descriptive and more like what I had previously mentioned. An example could be where the district has in the past gotten into cost sharing arrangements with developers to upsize tanks for the benefit of our existing and future customers. And the developer has a current schedule that we are beholden to. So it becomes a high priority, not that we would be building the new infrastructure, but just because it is being built as part of a development, and we want to take advantage of that and upsize it. That's that. With the funding secured, just backing up, the county receives a lot of grant funding, and their grant funding comes with strings attached that unfortunately we get connected to, and so we become a bit of the puppet there in that regard. So both tier 2 and tier 1 are sometimes outside of our control.
Thank you. Can you give an example of operational efficiency?
Dawn, I'm not sure if you want to do that.
Sure. So for the district, for many years now, consolidation has been a high priority to increase efficiency. So anytime we can come up with a project, an affordable project that we can fund one way or another that increases our efficiency, like a treatment plant consolidation, or pump station consolidation, or tank consolidation project, or even now we're working on lift station consolidations. All of those sort of projects really help improve our efficiency, so we can reallocate the money saved or those resources to other areas of the district. So that becomes a high priority for us.
Great, thank you. Well, let me return to the board then and see if there's anyone that has questions or comments on this characterization of necessary.
I had one question.
Please.
End of life replacement, obviously that's got to be CIP, correct?
Yes. Depending, I think, Director Kearns, hopefully we can plan on these projects. But unfortunately for us, sometimes it comes at a moment's notice. Many years ago now, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we lost a couple of tanks up in Confidence area, and we had to take them out of service immediately and consolidate them immediately without notice. So sometimes it happens, but yeah, hopefully we can plan on it.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question.
Please.
Could you explain a little bit the partner develop and then current deficiency? Could that be explained a little bit, please? Again, maybe?
I can try to explain maybe a little better. The example of, let's say, Valley Vista, a developer wants to build in the Jamestown service area. They absolutely need to have a storage tank associated with their development, but the storage tank may only need to be 200,000 gallons. However, the whole Jamestown area is only served currently by one tank that the district wouldn't really be able to take out of service to maintain. And so there's a desire from the district to have 2 tanks serving that area for proper future maintenance. And yet the developer's tank is not big enough to serve our current customer base. And so the district, may want to upsize. Well, we have executed an agreement to upsize that. There have been other examples of development where, the developer would only need to build X feet of pipe, but if the district were to grab onto that pipeline and extend it another couple hundred feet or 1,000 feet, we would be able to establish an interconnection with another area of our system and improve reliability and hydraulics and fire flow and that kind of thing. Hopefully that gives you current deficiency is, I suppose, a bit subjective. You could say we have a current deficiency in the Jamestown area. We have one tank, and if we ever need to recoat that tank, we don't have a very easy way to do that. So it is, but it doesn't mean that we're necessarily deficient in terms of the regulations. We're still delivering safe potable water to Jamestown, and the state hasn't cited us in being out of compliance. It's just from an operational perspective, it would be desirable to have a second tank.
Okay.
Thank you. That was good. Thanks.
Yeah, anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Let's go to the third one. So this is recommended, and the first one is increased capacity. Then there's board driven, and one of the examples that was given is if you have a strategic plan, or even today, if you set a priority, it would fall into this bucket. And then something that might extend an asset's life. So it's an investment that really pays off a good return on investment. I'll go back to staff again and ask if they wouldn't mind just augmenting what I outlined. And I'll let Eric and Dawn argue over who goes first.
So, I mean, I'm trying to think of some examples here, but increased capacity. So I guess in Tuolumne City, a number of years ago, we partnered with the Tuolumne Band of Miwok tribes. They had a desire to increase their development and their growth. So they partnered with us to increase the capacity of the Tuolumne treatment plant. So in that case, we rebuilt the treatment plant with increased capacity. That would be an example. That's just one example. Eric might have another example.
Yeah, maybe another example is we replaced a water main right through town in Sonora a number of years ago on South Washington Street, and we decided to increase the size of that pipeline. The pipeline was in a state of disrepair, had a high failure rate. It needed to be replaced, but rather than replace it with the same size, we just anticipate that in the future there'll be higher demands on that pipeline, so we increase capacity. So it's a blend of recommended, maybe the proportional cost to go from a 10-inch to a 12-inch is a recommended increase in capacity, but the project itself was more like a tier 2 or type of project, in that it was at the end of life of that pipeline. I mean, it was 90 years old and it needed to be replaced. So unfortunately, nothing falls in, and black and white right into the bucket, but that's the kind of decision and evaluation that we go through.
That's great, thank you. Once again, let's return to the board and find out if the board has any questions about this category.
Well, actually, I do. This is for Eric about what you were just talking about, Eric. If that project, which I remember well, had not been done, then that development for that new bank probably couldn't have occurred, correct?
That's a good point. It certainly wasn't anticipated at the time when we upsized the pipeline, but we knew there were commercial uses in that area that could develop. And so, yes, I think your statement is correct. I could also elaborate real quick on extends assets life. Dawn and I, we value the sewer lining that is done each year. And I think sewer lining is a prime example of extends assets life, because the sewer pipeline themselves, they may not be at the end of their life. They may not be a regulatory driven replacement, but by lining it, we may get another 30 years out of a pipeline, not have to dig up the street. So that's a good example of extending useful life.
Okay, anyone else? Let's go ahead then to the next group, which is desirable. And these are things that improve reliability, improve level of service, and partnered other stewardship. And this one, I think this will be a nice one if Don or Eric want to just explain the difference between kind of funding secured partner developer kind of things, and then the last one, which is the other kind of stewardship types of projects. So I will go ahead and lean once again to staff and ask if one of you wouldn't mind explaining sort of those differences.
Well, I wouldn't mind taking a stab at improved reliability, because as we were talking about some of these other examples earlier, this could fall under the operational efficiency as well. Eric reminded me, the need for a second tank in the Jamestown area, because someday we're going to have to rehab the current tank. And so one great example of this one here for improved reliability is when we took that pipeline down from the Big Hill system down to the Columbia system. That was the only way we were going to be able to actually rehab the existing clear well in Columbia. There was just no other way. There was no other way to feed that system with any water. And by putting this pipeline down, it one, gave us the opportunity to rehab the clear well, which is in dire straits. And now two, if there's any other kind of problem with the Columbia system, the Big Hill system can take over and feed the entire town of Columbia, which includes the airport. So that's a great example for me of an improved reliability.
An example of the partnered other stewardship in parentheses, trying to think of exactly a stewardship example, but the board just took action on the environmental document on a water main project in Tuolumne City. That would certainly fall under a partnered arrangement. It isn't an obligation, a mandatory necessary type of water main replacement, but by partnering with the Tuolumne City Sanitary District, it increases the attractiveness of doing such a project by cost savings and sharing and paving and those types of things. But if the board decided it just didn't want to move forward with that project because it didn't fall into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that would be fine. That's the board's prerogative. But staff has elevated it to this level 4 just because of the opportunities for cost savings.
And then when I was reading some of your materials, what I got from this idea of stewardship also, this might be one of the ones where you have another agency that's doing something, and by partnering, that project can have more multi-benefits. And so you had mentioned some things like associated, say, with parks, or sometimes in other agencies, you might see something where you have some kind of a stormwater flood type of a thing that's partnered with some sort of a park or recreation thing. You might have something associated with the treatment system that would result in an ecosystem benefit by a slight adjustment by partnering with somebody else to that project to get a benefit there. So as I read your criteria, that's what I understood it to mean. Did I get that right, Eric?
Thank you so much. You did. You nailed it. And I'm now remembering a few other ones. Sierra Pines, the water treatment facility, had a recreational component. And the district, although it's not funded yet, the district reached out to Tuolumne County and to Twain Harte CSD to engage them in a possible collaboration on who would operate and maintain those recreational facilities. We've have a number of other fire fuels reduction. I mean, that is a partnership with CAL FIRE, with the Forest Service, with SPI, with the Fire Safe Council. We've done numerous projects that this board has authorized under that arrangement as well. So I think there are a lot of examples I'm leaving out, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I took you by surprise. I didn't tell you guys to, you briefed me, so I'm repeating back to you what you told me.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this back up to the board and see if there's questions about anything you've heard in this category. Okay, and Go ahead, Barbara, please.
Okay. I have a question, but I don't really know how to form it because I don't know if you can still hear me with my unstable connection.
Try turning off your
okay.
video. Try turning off your video. It may improve your bandwidth. There you go. Let's see if that works.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so when I look at, like Eric said, there's so many projects, and maybe as we get into this, that they really could be several tiers, you know, multiple tiers, or they're, like Eric said, they're not black and white. For, you know, safety, to me, that includes, you know, making sure that there's fire flow, you know, because that's a really big priority in our county. And so I'm sure as we get into this, that there will be some of the projects that we discuss will have, will fall under multiple tiers, and maybe some will have be in the other category also. That, so I just had a comment, I guess. Not
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, that's a good question. So the safety that's identified, say in tier 1, so what I'm going to just check with Eric and again, and Dawn, just based on my understanding from my conversations with you, is that that when we talk about safety in tier 1, that has to do with your primary mission and sort of things that fall under a regulatory context, like, you know, if there was a serious disruption of service or potential physical harm to someone as a result of your actual assets and infrastructure, that would be a tier 1, versus what Barbara's talking about, which is that, and this would probably be based on my understanding of your criteria, in tier 3 or 4, the idea of improving community safety, like through fire safe and things like that. So let me just check, and I think that's what Barbara's talking about. Barbara, please correct me if I didn't get that right. And let me check in with staff to find out if we understand that right.
I'm not sure if Dawn wants to, or Abby, but I think that the way you characterize that is the way staff, Lisa, you characterized it as the way staff interpreted it. But I think Barbara's point is well taken, especially with fire safety now. You know, that may, in the board's estimation, that may elevate it if you interpret this, the community-wide safety. But a concrete example of the safety that I think Dawn and Abby and I were looking at in tier 1 is just as basic as replacing all the ladders on our tanks. We budgeted to do that a number of years ago because it was simply unsafe for our operators to even climb the ladder to get on top of the tank. That is critical to our mission, and really a mandatory investment. Whereas the fire protection is really a top priority now too. So I think that's part of the discussion that we're having here today is what does the board want? And you see all these blank boxes here under other. So yeah, just to weigh in on what I think staff was thinking, but I think we're open to expanding our view of how safety is interpreted in these other categories as well.
Okay, Barbara, did you want to add to that, or?
I do, and I did not realize until talking to Tom Trott of for edification. He's the general manager for Twain-Hart Community Services District, and I said, are we mandated to provide water for fire flow? And he said, oh yeah, we are, and sent me all this literature or not literature, but the regs, the codes that said we are mandated to provide water. We're not mandated to fight fire or anything like that, but we are mandated to provide fire. That it's under regulatory authorities of the state, and that was why they had spent money on a dry hydrant, et cetera, plus their community services district. So that was new to me. I didn't really realize that we were mandated as an agency to provide fire for water for fire. So any rate, I'll just throw that out to kind of enlarge the circle of our regulatory responsibilities. And
Barbara, I would, Jesse has sent us, and it's been a few years, different interpretation that wasn't the same as I think what Tom had sent you. With Twain Harte being a community services district, providing fire, recreation, water, and wastewater. And so I don't question it, other than it would be great to have, if Jesse was here, he could clarify that for us. And I think we should talk to Jesse afterwards, because that changes the perspective that at least I've been operating under as it relates to fire obligation.
Okay.
that one could be yeah, so we can clarify that. I agree.
Yeah, I'm just going to note that I'm really lucky today. One of my team members was able to join. I'm just going to acknowledge. So Kirsten Pringle is on the line right now, and Kirsten is actually helping me take notes so I can really pay attention to you. And then Kirsten's going to take the notes in the background. But anyway, Kirsten, if we can take that as an action item, we'll go ahead and make sure to set up a follow-up for that from this meeting. So I think that is an important distinction, and clearly could definitely change how you're approaching something. However, as Eric noted, the board can put things in any tier that they want. That's up to the board what they want to do. So I think there's a sort of a helpful differentiation between those things, as regulatory, mandatory, and then you move to the safety, community safety, infrastructure types of a thing. So that's a really important nuance. That's great. Thank you. Anybody else on this one?
Actually, I wanted to throw something out if I could.
Please.
So I think it would be beneficial if this follow-up with Jesse Barton as to what TUD is actually legally responsible for or not responsible for, is to also be able to ask if indeed we are obligated in some way, shape, or form to provide water for fire, then do we have the option or the ability to say where that water is available at and what type of water is available? In other words, that the CAL FIRE and the rest of the fire departments are requested to go to raw water always first, rather than going to a hydrant for the treated water, which our ratepayers, our county, may very well need if there was a large fire, just to drink and be able to cook and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I apologize for this. Is there anyone in this group that knows your statutory, typically this question is tied to your originating status. So as a special district, and then as a certain type of a utility. So for example, there's a list of things in statute about what an RCD can do and what a community service district can do and that kind of thing. So is that something that everyone's familiar with, and you have a good handle on kind of what your statutory requirement is based on the type of a special district that you are? Is that something that's well understood?
I wouldn't claim to well understand it. I see Barbara. If Barbara, you want to say something, I'm not sure, you're muted. Oh, okay. If Jesse was here, I think you could clarify. I mean,
Yeah.
my understanding is the district can provide a wide range of services to the public, But as a county water agency and a special district, there are specific things we're legally obligated to provide. And I think this discussion of fire flow is a really great one to flesh out, as well as Director Ringen's comments on how much can we, kind of direct where water resources are provided and allocated for use by CAL FIRE and Tuolumne County Fire and whatnot. I think those are great things because if that falls under an obligation of ours, it immediately moves up to maybe into tier 1 mandatory. And it just hasn't been. I'll be honest, we have a number of pump stations. Dawn would know, better how many of them, but we have a lot of them that are designed to provide maximum day demand for domestic use in accordance with California Water Works standards. They don't have fire pumps in them. They are not designed to fight fires. And that was, based on our understanding that, if we were going to provide that level of service, and if we had to, the cost would go up quite a bit, and the small number of customers that are connected to those pumping facilities or the district at large would need to pay for those upgrades. So this has a lot of implications, whatever the determination by Jesse and the board, what the board determines.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here a little bit and talk about a couple things. And a little bit what Eric just talked about, many of our pump stations, correct, they are not meant to have fire flow, to meet any sort of fire flow demands. I will reiterate, we inherited those. The majority of those, this district inherited. If we were to build one brand new today, we certainly have a conversation. In fact, I'm telling you right now, we're contemplating, just this morning, have a nice conversation about rehabbing the Cedar Rock pump station, which is a chronic problem station for us. And in our conversation today, we are talking about a third pump for fire flow to meet some minimum fire flow demand. So that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is, Eric, you correct me if I'm wrong, but when we size a tank today for, let's say, we're going to go put a tank in Ponderosa today to feed the reservation, right? We do consider some minimal amount for fire flow to meet some minimal. We plug that in naturally for us. I believe we do that today.
Yes.
I don't know if that's in our regulations to do that, but I feel like we talked enough about that today. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is I think the intent of this conversation is to intentionally broaden TUD's scope of meeting fire flow because of where we are today in the state of the climate, the disasters that are around us all the time. So I think that's the intent here, is to how can TUD or should TUD broaden the scope of fire flow?
Great, thank you. All right, anyone else? Barbara, did you want to add to this, or any of the other directors?
Yeah, real quick, if I may. What complicates this, and I don't know if it's in the mandatory, because I think it's discretionary for PG&E, but it requires us to have a mandatory response to the PG&E stoppages. And it gets back to what Don and Eric are saying, is it puts the burden on us, and then it puts the burden on the ratepayer, of course, to have pumps and generators and whatnot already, and gas, et cetera. So the safety thing is growing, because what PG&E is doing definitely affects us, and then our ability to provide water, if indeed that is mandated of us. So I just wanted to throw in the additional thing of the PG&E stoppage, and then and that's their discretion, but it makes us, our response in terms of safety, mandatory.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to do was just take a minute and do exactly what you're doing right this second. Is look, this is what the staff has looked at. This has been the historic process that they've used to sort of set their priorities when they're developing the capital improvement plan. There are some things I've heard you talk about that potentially would be in addition to or separate from the criteria. And we can swing back to this later in the discussion, but offhand, I want to check in with the board and say, is there anything else you would be looking at if you were thinking about criteria or how you would partner it? So either moving things around a little bit or things that you would add to this list or subtract to this list. And if you don't mind, I would like to just kind of work through the group and just kind of get some initial feedback, and feel free to pass if you don't have any thoughts on it. But Jeff, would you mind starting?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're looking for other priorities, I think that Sonora treatment plant, I know, has been a pain in our side for a while, hasn't it, Dawn? And I think that's definitely a priority that needs to come up.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the criteria, what criteria would that fall under?
I would say that would be maybe a little bit of both of end of life replacement CIP. Mm-hmm. It's a strategic plan for sure, I think, and it's also operational efficiency. But I know that we've sunk a lot of money in keeping that thing going recently, haven't we, Don? I mean, isn't that correct?
You're absolutely right. We are actively spending plenty of money today to make it more reliable and safe to meet regulatory requirements.
And that is one of
right on the money.
That's one of our. That's our. Isn't that? That's our. I'm struggling for a lack of word here, but it's our. It's our. We run more water through that. We treat more water through that plant than we do any of the other plants. Correct?
We do. I mean, it is our largest treatment facility today. It serves all of the downtown Sonora area, the hospital, Jamestown. Yeah, it's an important, very important treatment plant. It just also happens to be our oldest treatment plant. So that, like I said before, we're at a crossroads there, and I don't want to hijack this on that, but yes, you're absolutely right. That's a good example.
Yeah. So as a criteria, I characterize that as poor return on investment on your current operation. You're just sinking money and it's just sunk cost. I could probably call it that too. Okay. Let me go ahead then. If you don't mind, I'll go to Ron. Thoughts, criteria. I'm looking particularly at criteria, things you would move, things you would add, change.
Well, as we went through this, I thought it was pretty well thought out by staff. And if this is what they've been using, excuse me, if this is a format that they've been using, it makes really good sense to me. I can't think of how to improve it, actually. I mean, it covers all the bases that I could see.
Okay, thank you. All right, David, is there anything you'd like to add, change, move around?
I think it's on a pretty good track. I would definitely mention some different projects that go in here, but mainly we're looking at the categories for projects and how they fit into the different tiers or different things. I think you're on a really good track. Certainly the definitions behind say regulatory, it's listed there. Maybe have a simple definition. Safety and how it's growing. I'm not sure, I would put fire or PG&E there, but certainly safety is expanding to incorporate other, projects or other ways of looking at some of our projects. I think you're on a good track.
Okay. And then let me go then to Lisa.
Hi. Yeah, I agree that this prioritization prioritization criteria is great. You guys did a lot of work on it and looks good. And the one thing that I think that complicates it is understanding where fire fits in, if that is indeed in the mandatory tier and to what level, or if that's more in the necessary or recommended tier. Also with the PG&E, same, just kind of understanding where that fits in the tier structure. But I think you guys did a good job of delineating, mandatory, necessary, recommended, and desirable. So thank you for your work.
Great, thank you. And Barbara?
Yeah, this mandatory, necessary, recommended, and desirable is really a great template to help organize, priority projects and where the money goes when we only have so much money. When I look at the gray, which would be like the PG&E, okay, in my mind, that falls into sort of a different set of, non-operational like these, which would be more sustainable. What would be sustainable for us, our whole community, and strategic. And so the PG&E acquisition would be strategic, and it would be for the long-term sustainability. So I look at maybe slightly more shades of gray. So I'm looking at the overall self-sufficiency and self-reliancy, what's going to get us there, and what's sustainable for us, because there's some actions that wouldn't be sustainable. And when I look at a sustainable action, it would be countywide. In other words, we don't just provide fire flow for our customers, right? It's countywide. So strategic would be, again, sort of a priority. If we don't have a water right, then where are we? If we don't perfect what was not perfected by our predecessors, then really, how are we going to have a sustainable future? So these are just more like umbrellas, if you will, in my mind, kind of an overlays on certain larger issues. And that would be the sustainability, if it's watershed wide, if it moves us towards self-reliancy. I mean, I just don't like these PG&E stoppages because they're so expensive, and it takes so much time for the district to check all the generators. I mean, it's a real hardship to deal with that. So I love the idea of alternative water resources, dual systems in our county, that redundancy, and staff, again, has worked really hard to make our system redundant, even though it may not fall into any of these categories. In a way, it makes us more self-reliant. So some criteria, if you will, would be sustainability, watershed wide, reliability, security, and self-sufficiency. So those are just the gray areas in between these.
Yeah, if I can add, Barbara, I think that's pretty fantastic. It makes me think. I'm sure Lisa was going to talk about this anyway, but that sustainability issue that you were just discussing makes it seem to me like it should go over there in the tier 1 mandatory group for sure. Just the way you put it, though. But yeah, that's a board decision, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the chart didn't like it when I did that. Just go ahead and catch that. Let's see, clean that up in a minute. Okay, very good. Anybody else? I'm going to get ready to move on to the next item. If we, unless anybody else wants to add to any of this. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead then and move to the next one. Thank you. Okay, so this is sort of the priority structure. Let's go ahead and take a look at this list. And I already heard that you think that a major priority might be this new Sonora water treatment. And that was based on some of the things that we talked about in terms of a crossover for lots of things. So that's just as an example. So what we'll be doing is be tacking back and forth and taking a look at your ability to receive funding, which I think up here in your other schematic, this is the sort of thing where it's partnership, stewardship, where there may be a fund asset that's available. Opportunistic is another one. When people are looking at project priorities, they might say, this grant thing came along, we didn't necessarily have this at the top of the pile, but man, we can't, pass that up because that's going to get some assets into there. So we don't quite have that squared away in terms of how to define it, but that's just something to keep at the back of your mind. Okay, what I wanted to do now, though, was to go ahead and talk a little bit more about some of the things that you might look at when you're thinking about the projects and how you're allocating them. So if you really understand the story of your project and you're looking at how many boxes that it actually ticks. So what are the different kinds of things that by really understanding the opportunities with this project. So one of the things when we did some pre-work on this that I talked with staff about was the idea that you could do a project plus. So by adding just a tiny benefit to it, or sort of rethinking or reimagining things that you already want to do, do you have the potential of gaining additional advocacy for your project in a legislative process? Do you have the ability to find additional grant funding that perhaps would have not otherwise been available to you? Do you potentially look in different places for funding streams that you might not otherwise have looked at? And so, Lisa, I know from your background that you worked in national parks. Is any of that kind of ringing a bell in terms of how people might think? If you don't mind, just kind of adding your own personal experience with that.
As far as, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thinking about projects in bigger ways, that it might open up more advocacy for something, or it might create more opportunities for grant funding or anything like that, ways that you might create new partners that didn't exist before. And I'm just thinking maybe in your past work experience, you've had some experiences like that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think just how you just put it, I think sums it up, is that thing of looking for and I think, when we met with the folks for talking about what the new administration is bringing in as far as opportunities, and specifically in sustainability and in water and in fire, looking at those opportunities of what funding avenues are opening up with this new administration, and seeing what state funds and what federal funds are coming up, and then doing partnering. And I think that we've talked in the meetings a bit about partnering with the county on different things, and it seems from the grants I've been involved in, a lot of them are looking for, it seems that a lot of them do look for this kind of integrated approach, and you could probably speak more to that. But and I think that the Park Service stuff is a little more specific, because there's particular funding streams that you're looking at, and nonprofits and things like that, that you are more easily aware of what they're looking for, their criteria. And with that, we had to do a lot of reaching across the silos, is what we called it, cross-divisional cooperation in order to qualify or be at the top tier of what they wanted to see in grants. But I think that when we look at fire and sustainability and what we need for our system, I think those things all go hand in hand and probably match up with a lot of the funding opportunities that are going to be new funding opportunities that are going to be opening. But you probably are more aware of these things than I am.
Well, I think we're all in a learning curve right now, so I wouldn't take any extra credit. Let me check in with anyone else on the board that might like to add to this. Is there anyone that would like to jump in, just thinking through a project in this more holistic way? Okay, how about staff? Any thoughts on this? So Don, you're an operations guy. What are your thoughts about thinking projects like this? And it's okay to say, I already have enough trouble without thinking like this.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say it's okay enough. That's just not the way we operate around here. You know, we're just very responsive. So, you know, all this time, we understand, you know, without any sort of guidance, we understand what our core mission is, TUD that is, and we can go ahead and plug away and understand what projects are high priorities. But again, I think that the intention of this is to broaden the mind, the thinking a little bit here, and to input certain ideas or projects that we wouldn't normally think about. So again, I'd really like for the board to weigh in here and give us their thoughts and opinions on this.
Great, thank you. Eric, thoughts?
I agree with Dawn. Go ahead, Director Ringen.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to talk, Eric. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I agree with Don on what he said. I mean, we look at the triple bottom line, and I'm looking at the graphic. There's 4 sections of the pie, and we usually look at economy, environment, and culture, like social, economic, and environment, but we've added to health and safety. So I think by broadening our view here, we can capture more opportunities to do projects for benefit of not just the ratepayers, but the community. So I think it's a good discussion.
And with that, I would agree wholeheartedly, and then add to that the way things are changing right now, the opportunity for us to be able to locate and capture grants and other great funding sources will be increased dramatically by doing this, by including these multiple parts to a certain project. But then too, I also wanted to say is that maybe I missed the point of today's meeting. I don't know, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but we're faced with, on the next slide that's coming up, there's in alphabetical order, it says, and it's proposed 2021 advocacy priorities. And where I'm going with this is that it's almost like we got 2 separate things here that we need to be talking about, but maybe I'm totally wrong. But we have some things that are more like, well, like the acquiring of PG&E infrastructure and the water rights, like the getting our water out of Phoenix Lake. Those are more of one type of project that are way at the top of the list. I mean, we should be all over those every moment we've got. But then we have these other important things that are more of a project nature, like the new Sonora water treatment facility, and so on. And those are projects, and those could be helped by using what we were just talking about on this graph, and incorporating other things in it, like with Sierra Pines, maybe having some recreational, educational possibilities up there. And of course, the Phoenix Lake restoration project, same thing. So I don't know, maybe I've got it all wrong, but it just seems to me like there's a business type and not regulatory, but a a deal where we have to work agreements and work through getting, like I said, the PG&E deal done and the New Maloney's water acquisition taken care of. And then we have all of the projects that we need to take care of. And I don't know what you've got to say about that.
Well, what I would say is your observation seems pretty on point. The goal for today was to say to your advocacy team and to say to the staff, from the perspective of the board, here's the stuff we want you to pay attention to. If you've got, 5 hours in your day and you've got 10 things that somebody wants you to do, when you have to pick something, here's how we as the board want you to triage what you're picking. And so so I would say everything you said is true. It's and both. However, the and both, all these tiers and types of things that they're looking at, those are all things that every day your advocacy team and your staff team have to look at and decide how they're going to allocate their resources to get something done. And you may also determine that they can't with it, we've got more priorities than they've got ours. And then you can also decide what you would want to do about that. Those are decisions the board gets to make. So does that help, Ron?
Yeah, it helps. It just in my simple mind, there's certain things that just are right at the very top. We shouldn't be spending much time at all on other things until we can get those accomplished, because there are things like getting the water rights and the PG&E thing that should have been done by the county 150 years ago, and we now are carrying the whole load, TUD, to get that done. And it's a big load. We need to figure that out. We need to get that done. So that would be right at the top, with the getting our water out of New Maloney's right below it, or right even with it. And then be able to have like a be on the lookout for is list, and that would be for grant opportunities or things like that would go into some of the projects.
Okay, so one of the things that we can do as we start moving past the sort of so the structure again today is to look at the criteria, to look at the projects and really make sure we understand what the projects are, and then go ahead and build that triage list, actually go through. And I think some of the things that you might be able to say is, for example, let's talk about your water right, or whatever it is that the board wants to talk about. You can almost stipulate that no matter what, we're not going to take our eye off the ball on this. We're not going to get diverge one way or another. And also, that's not 100% capacity. There are a lot of other things that are going to need to get done, or they're going to cause problems for us. So it's going to be an and both. It's not going to be perhaps as clean, but it's just enough to set kind of a little lighthouse for the staff and your advocacy team. And I see they're actually nodding their heads yes. The staff and the advocacy team to say, okay, when I come in today in the door and I'm looking at the 22 things that just came through on my email, here's the most important thing, and then here's the next most important thing, and that type of thing. And they're balancing all these other things. They're balancing their operations with these larger policy goals. So Ron, am I making sense?
Sorry, I have to unmute. Absolutely.
Okay, good. I was like, oh no, maybe I'm not making sense. Okay, great. Anybody else want to add to this? Want to comment on it? Abby, you haven't had a chance to talk yet. I'll take Abby and then check with Barbara. So Abby, anything you want to say?
Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I appreciate everyone's comments agreeing with Don and Eric, and appreciate your comments about giving staff a good, clear vision of what the board would like us to focus on. So with that, I'll let President Balin speak.
Great. Please go ahead, Barbara.
I think I think this is just a really great overlay to get all of us thinking about, like you said, Lisa, the multiple benefits of any project and any funding that we're seeking. And like Ron had said, there are some real overarching priorities that which are our opportunity to get this senior water right. So that's almost like in a category all by itself. That will enable the health and safety, cultural enrichment, environmental protection, and help our economy and help us grow. So that and the Central Valley Project water out of Maloney's, that will help the lower basin area. That will be new water coming in. We will be a contractor that will help our tribes. And so those are almost a priori, so to speak. They're just in this whole separate category. They're just so necessary for our community to withstand drought and fire. Okay, so if we set those aside, like Lisa Murphy said, more and more we have to look at how do we achieve our core mission, which is our providing good clean water and good sewer services. How do we achieve our core mission? And also cultural enrichment, watershed values, and position ourselves in the economy, as well as the health and safety of providing water. And so that integrated approach is what it's no longer just an engineering solution. It's also going to achieve our mission, and also, like for the example with Phoenix Lake, that has an environmental component and it has a cultural enrichment component. And so more and more, our ability to get our money is also tied to, in order to achieve our core mission, all these then become part of that mission because the money, the application process, we must address all this and even more. So I really appreciate this particular overlay, in addition to those necessary mandated, nice to do tier, because in a way, some of these we may get the money for, and we don't have maybe the staff to implement it, let's say, because it involves other aspects of it that are non-engineering that we would have to contract out for those services too. So the opening up of our thinking also includes opening up different combinations of project managers that could be contractors.
Right, exactly. And so when we look at this particular wheel, what every one of these buckets does is it creates a potential new partner and it creates a potential new fund source. So when we're thinking about something that might otherwise have been a traditional engineering project, all of a sudden there may be additional ways to enhance or bring more resources or bring more advocacy to your project. So if this doesn't happen a lot in your community, or maybe it does, in other communities I work in, sometimes projects are controversial. I can't imagine that's happened to you. But in those places where one of the things that the advocates are going to do, the advocates are going to sit down and they're going to look at they're doing the same thing I'm doing with you right now. They're looking at these buckets and they're saying, okay, who can I go talk to that's going to help me get this project done? Who, like, for example, on the economy, right now I'm working on a project in Oregon. It's a water treatment plant. And we've gotten some pushback about mostly from the people that are like, maybe no growth or something like that. But anyway, one of the things that we've been talking about is it's an aging population and we really need to have some new jobs and some things like that. And so in that location for them, for their board, this economy piece was extremely important because they were able to create advocacy with the Chamber of Commerce and things like that. So that's just an example. It's very dependent though on the board and the board's priorities. That's not something that's one size that fits all at all. Up to your health and safety when you're talking about these broader community issues with fire in particular, climate change, all of a sudden you've got a whole new pots of money and whole new ways that people are going to be thinking about this that potentially brings some new resources as well. And that resources may be people, they could be money, they could be advocacy, they could be people that are helping you with permitting. So there are a lot of things that when you're looking at these buckets, really thinking about your projects in terms of what they bring to the table. And that would be true even for your top line, most critical things when you're talking about New Melones. I saw that one of the things on your list was voluntary agreements. When you're talking about PG&E, you've got the bankruptcy things going on right now. When you're able to swirl back and you go talk to legislators, these are some things, or the other regulators, these are things, PUC, for example, these are things that are going to help you build your case. And that's the kind of stuff that your advocacy team can do for you. So I'll just pause again, making sure I make sense why we're looking at these things. So Ron, you're my decider about whether or not I'm making sense.
Yikes, I didn't know I was going to get put in that position.
I could tell though, you're the best person to tell me whether or not I'm making sense.
Well, you're doing a great job.
Okay, all right. Let's keep going then. All right, so what I wanted to do now, this was your, excuse me. This is how you develop the messages from that little circle that we just looked at. This is how you do that. So, and these are all fairly straightforward. They're in your handout. I don't need to go over them again, but for somebody that's just joined it, doesn't know what we're talking about. I wanted to just mention briefly this one right here, this culture enrichment. This is something that's pretty new. Your team talked to you about the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line typically were these three things. There's sometimes an equity part to that as well. One of the reasons that you don't see equity as its own through line in these PowerPoints is the idea that equity has to be part of all projects. That's somewhat like in California, especially with the human right to water being the state policy, you have to incorporate that across all projects. It's not something that you would say build out in some way. So that's the reason you don't see it as its own box. But culture and enrichment, this talks about the idea that recreation, you have tribal communities that you're working with in your region. And there are spiritual issues and things that have a historic cultural. I've got people here that know actually you know more about this than I do, Barbara. But there are things associated with the cultural issues. Viewshed is a big one. And viewshed, by the way, can also be something that's very important to your economy. That could be a real asset in terms of thinking about how money comes into your community is the fact you have viewshed. So this is something that's kind of new. People haven't really been talking in those terms before. So just wanted to flag that. Okay, well, what I had next was to go through and take a look at some of the projects. And we wanted to just kind of walk through it and kind of see if people had a sense of the projects in these more holistic ways, if in fact it was possible to have them. And this was let me check with staff. So this was principally your capital improvement list, right? Is that right, Dawn or Eric?
Largely our capital improvement plan, but you know, the acquisition and the FERC relicensing, those aren't, and solar power, no, it's a combination of.
Okay. So what I heard from the group is that there's some things that are sort of non-negotiable. I mean, they have to be their top line things. So what I heard from you is that the PG&E water supply, that was something that's just no matter what has to be done. And it sounded like the new Malonis and process was going to be had to be done, that those were things that may be immediately elevated above the others. Barbara, were there others that moved to a different tier?
I agree with what that's absolutely, that's water security right there. That's I agree with you. Those, and please board speak up, but it just seems like without those, we're just living off somebody else owning our water. So just seems like they're way up there in terms of priority.
Yeah, I agree, Barbara. The future of TUD, the future of the county, the future of our ratepayers, it all begins and ends with that PG&E water right acquisition. It just does, in my opinion.
Okay. David, did you want to add in?
Well, I'm actually in agreement with that, that the importance of the PG&E negotiations right now. And certainly the USBR comes in next. I'm not real familiar with Phoenix project as far as a FERC relicensing, but that ties together with the PG&E's license, correct?
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But yeah, if you're comfortable with those first two being like just top line, no question, those have to be essential. We'll go ahead and get those off. We'll get those off the list and we'll talk about what to do with them in a little bit. But if everyone's in agreement, Lisa, are you good with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree that for not only for the water rights, but for the ability to put water first, as far as how use is determined on that water. Right now with PG&E, with it being in PG&E's hands, there's the push and pull between hydropower and domestic water. So I think that in addition to acquiring the water rights, we also acquire the ability to plan and move forward with our water management in an easier way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I love the way you phrased that, which was put water first. That's the kind of thing an advocate would say. So I'll flag that for the note taker, the put water first thing. That's a nice hierarchy. Ron, you didn't get a chance to weigh in on this one.
Well, yeah, I had already said those were absolutely my primary, very first things that I felt should have complete attention on, because they just have to get done. The only one thing that I'd like to add is that right now, in order to make that water out of New Maloney's contract agreement come to fruition, we've been hung up on a water assessment. And I'm not going to get into why, but that's what we need in order to move that thing forward. And so that would have to be tied in with that USBR New Maloney's contract agreement, because that's what we need in order to move it forward. And I think that at the same time, then we would also be looking at least in the beginning, tribal partnerships for fire water infrastructure priorities, because part of that assessment, water assessment needs report is going to include them.
Okay, so I'm hearing two things. The first thing I'm hearing is that we have a consensus on the fact that those are the two top line most critical priorities, the New Malonis issue and the PG&E issue. Then I'm hearing from Ron, when we're thinking about the work plan to accomplish it, there are some critical path types of things that have to happen, and those need to be chunked out to have them happen. So as we're thinking about the way to do it, that will be important. So I'm going to, we're just going to say for right now, we'll circle back to this, but for right now, we do have a complete agreement that those are the top line priorities.
Can I add something real quick just to
Please.
the conversation?
Absolutely.
And I totally agree with the line of thinking about moving those items to the very, very top. But just understand, if you don't already understand it, it's worth repeating if you do. The Phoenix project for 1061 relicensing, that is equally as important. What I'm trying to say there is there are competing interests in that relicensing in competition with TUD. So that equally has to be important. It's front and center with us.
Okay.
Have staff members to work around that. So just
So
understand.
Don, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things. I'm going to eliminate the word "but" from this conversation today, and then I'm going to add the word "and." And so right now we have a consensus on the top two line things, and then you would like to do an "and." And the "and" is going to be around the Phoenix Lake, and that's going to actually tie to what Ron said. And what Ron said is that if we're looking at these other things, there's some things in our work planning we have to elevate to make it happen. So I'm not in any way disagreeing with you. I'm just reframing what you said. Does that work? Is that okay? Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead then. And there's the two things. There's Phoenix Project FERC and Phoenix Lake Restoration. And I wanted to find out, because I'm not familiar, you have a really nice project sheet on the Phoenix Lake Preservation and Restoration project, but the FERC relicensing, that's a different issue. So could someone help me so I can understand how we need to triage this into the list? Help me understand what's at stake here. Is that something you want to do, Dawn?
Me or Eric, I'll get a nod from Eric one way or another.
Okay. Eric, do you want to run with it?
No, he pointed at me. So yeah, that's one of the interesting things about TUD and Tuolumne County. There's a lot of titles very similar. So the Phoenix Lake Restoration Project, that has to do with the actual lake itself in Phoenix Lake, which is the supplies water to the Sonora treatment plant. So that, and the idea there was to improve water quality, increase storage capacity for fire flow, and improve aesthetics, right? So that's a complete separate project. The Phoenix project for 1061 has to do with PG&E's assets and their relicensing of the hydro system and everything that goes with that. And so that's up for relicensing every 4 years or so. And it's just an opportunity for everybody to, in this case, compete for that finite amount of water that's in the river. Did I get that right, Eric?
Yes, I would say, just geographically speaking, so that we can understand the output of the Phoenix project, the hydroelectric facility, the discharge goes into Phoenix Lake. And so, you know, that's whatever conditions are attached to the FERC license will directly impact TUD's ability to have water supply. And the Phoenix Lake is our storage this side of the flume. So it's a critical asset for reliability, resiliency, emergency response, and day-to-day operations, as it serves the largest water treatment plant that we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so with regards to the FERC relicensing, how often does that renew the FERC licensing? What's the?
I think it's 40 or 50 years.
40 or 50 years. So that's something that for right now is going to be, once that's settled, that's really going to be in stone kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So do you, based on what you heard from Ron, would this be an attendant to the PG&E, or so based on what Donna said and based on what we heard about the two top priorities, would the Phoenix project FERC automatically move into, like, say, rank this third spot? Is that how that would work?
Who are you asking, Lisa?
Well, let me ask you, Eric, and then I'll kind of, I just need to understand technically if you can't do one thing without the other.
I think that the FERC relicensing process is a subset of the PG&E water supply and hydropower acquisition, because whatever TUD assets TUD eventually acquires will basically be conditioned on the FERC license, and we would be acquiring the FERC license. So I think that it's a subset of that, and thus is a very, very high, the highest priority as expressed by the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lisa, it sounds like you look like you had a little bit of understanding of this particular issue. Is there any thoughts you have on this? I know these mute buttons just do you in, don't they?
Yeah, I think Don and Eric did a great job of capturing that, and just, yeah, the FERC is directly associated with the PG&E acquisition.
Okay, so that kind of gives us some tiering then, right? That gives us the PG&E, the New Melones, the FERC, and that kind of sets us up in a tier for that. Let me check, Ron. Thoughts?
Can I ask one question to Don and Eric?
Of course.
What order do those things need to go in? Is the FERC licensing, does that happen before the acquisition or part of the acquisition? Because it's a separate, like the FERC relicensing is a separate chunk. How does that work timeline wise?
You want to go, Eric?
You go ahead.
So I think, like Eric said, they kind of go hand in hand, although they're two different efforts, and we have staff and consultants working for us in two separate efforts, but they have to go hand in hand. I'll say it my way. I'm a little blunt. We might end up in a situation, if we're not careful, of, yay, we got the acquisition and we have everything we wanted. But because of the results of the relicensing, we're very limited on what we could do with it. So it's equally important, and I just want to overemphasize that we cannot and will not drop our eye off the ball on that relicensing.
Okay, so that's really consistent with what Lisa said. It's like put the water first. That's really in line with that. Okay, Ron, take it away. Thoughts?
Well, I've been following that FERC thing for quite a while now, several years, because I go to every one of the Tuolumne County Natural Resource Committee meetings, and that's where the county tackled this about 2-3 years ago, and I brought it to TUD staff's attention here last month when I saw in the agenda for the Tuolumne County Natural Resource Committee that they were bringing this FERC 1061 thing back up. And the issue here is that we have an environmental group and we have the Forest Service that are trying to get so many acre feet of water to flow down the river, supposedly to flush a red-eyed bass out, which is eating all, in their minds, eating all the frogs and all the trout fingerlings. And the thing that's ridiculous is that what I've heard, and you know, I wasn't there at the time, so I can't say that it's absolutely true, but it was a Forest Service that planted those darn things in there. But then they want to take the water from TUD's allocation and run the river up in height. So I think this is actually, and there's some other things too that the county wanted that are around the Lyons Reservoir situation, as far as access and recreation and that sort of thing. So I think most of this is just keeping our eye on it and having people from staff there that can argue that, you know, these things that are being demanded by these outside groups is not part of what this is all about. I mean, it's just like Don said, when you open up a FERC relicensing, it gives everybody and their brother in the area a bite at the apple, and it can get really messy. So most of that, I think, is just staying on top of it and having good, powerful arguments to back them down and put some common sense into this thing.
So I'll just make a quick observation and before you continue, which when the FERC relicensing is opened, all this stuff comes on the table, everything that you see here. The culture and enrichment, the environment, the economy, these are all things that the FERC relicensing is actually looking at. And so one of the things as you're thinking about the way that you want to position yourself into these conversations is to be very, very mindful that as an advocacy issue, you actually have to be thinking in a broader way to be successful in the process. And so everyone else is coming to the table with things that you may or may not be interested in. They're coming to the table with this circle, and that's what they're working with. So that was my kind of just color commentary. So please keep going.
Well, no, I'm basically at an end here. I just wanted to kind of lay out that there has been some history on this, and it's just that it kind of fell off the table. Nobody was really watching it for a while. I think we had a couple of staff from TUD that were going to the FERC meetings, but I think they were maybe possibly getting beat up, for the lack of a better words. And but I do agree that that should be right underneath the PG&E acquisition or hand in hand with it.
Okay, let me check with David. Is there anything that you'd like to add to this, David?
No, I think we're on track with that. It is a priority to keep track of what other people are trying to come to the table as a stakeholder to put into that license.
Yeah. Jeff?
Tie it in with the PG&E asset acquisition.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, not much else to say other than, I agree. It does go hand in hand, and it has to be right there with the others right up on top.
Okay. I'm going to look to the chair. I noticed there's someone from the audience that would like to weigh in. I don't know your protocols.
Correct. I was going to say Sarah Husby does have her hand up for a comment.
So whatever your protocol is, I will lean to the chair on that. Okay. Sarah, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead. I was on. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure what your protocols were, but yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in right now. I just wanted to comment about the FERC relicensing. CSERC has been involved in these meetings since day one for over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm actually the program director with CSERC, and I personally have been involved for almost a year now in these conversations. I just want to say there has been things that the Forest Service and CSERC has been wanting to see when it came to the FERC relicensing, but a lot of compromise has also been made in the process too. I feel that good dialogue has been made with PG&E and the other federal and state agencies in this process, and they are continuing to happen. The FERC has not been finalized, and there is the opportunity for the public and TUD to continue to weigh in, and all of the meetings are open to the public and are still continuing to happen. So we definitely welcome TUD to be involved in these conversations and want to recognize that we are still in the negotiating process and that it has not been finalized. And so thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Sarah, could you comment on this project story wheel? What are your thoughts about this?
I think it's a very useful tool. I think it's looking at some really important points that TUD needs to be addressing when going forward with looking at the different projects that they are doing. I think being strategic when approaching different projects is key, and this is a good, useful tool.
Yeah, and then I just, from my experience with FERC relicensing, these are all things that are on the table. Every one of these things that
Yes, that's correct.
the stakeholders are coming to the table with. It's really important for everyone to understand what they are, so they understand how to work with them. Great. All right. Anybody else on this? Okay, so we have now defined 3 priorities, and I want to go back then and just kind of talk a little bit in terms of the 3. Would it be useful at this point, Barbara, I need your help. Would it be useful at this point for these top line things to kind of drill into this a little bit, or do you think it would be more useful to look at the other projects to help us when we allocate our priorities to those? So we've got, because we talked about maybe looking at Phoenix Lake and just kind of talking about how we can think about these projects in a broader way. And then we could kind of work our way through the others. But in terms of the advocates and staff, do you have a preference about that? Or I could even ask staff if they do.
I like what you said about, I think I heard this right, that we move into, let's say, Phoenix restoration, and then we'll circle back to those 3 top priority ones.
Okay.
Is that what you, I think that's what I heard.
That's what I was asking. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, right now, I actually would like a cup of coffee. So what do you all think about taking a 5-minute break, standing up? Maybe other people would like a cup of coffee too, and then coming back to this, and I'll put my glasses on. Let's see. I have 10:40. What about if we restart the conversation at 10:45? Does that work? All right, I see thumbs up. Okay, cameras down. I'll see you back at 10:45. Okay, I think we're back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is so good, Lisa. This is just really neat.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad that it's working. I'm really glad that you have so much consensus too. That's great. That's great news. All right, let's go ahead and move into the actual projects. So what we're going to do, we'll start with the Phoenix Lake Restoration Project. The staff's actually done quite a bit of work on this. There's a very nice handout that they've prepared that has a lot of the information that we would normally be looking at as we fill out the little wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a new page. And so we will take the first one and just kind of experiment with this a little bit and fill in these boxes. So we're going to go with Phoenix Lake. And I'll go ahead and start with asking, is there a person that we want to have take the lead on starting to fill in the boxes? Do you want me to look to staff, or would you like the board to start with this? Okay. Does anybody want to jump in?
Are you asking, you're asking staff to start with the
I'm
health
just
and safety?
checking with anybody that would like to jumpstart this. So I'm looking for a willing volunteer before I start calling names. Jeff, you look like you're
Question.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Barbara. Go ahead,
Does this
Barbara.
include the things that already got accomplished? Am I on mute?
You know, you're good.
Would this
Yeah.
include what's already been accomplished, and then
Yeah,
also what still needs to be done?
Yeah. So let's think about what we're going to use this for. So this is something that we're going to give to your staff, and we're going to give to the advocacy team. And we're saying this is the stuff we're looking for from this project. And staff has done a really good job of laying out what this project can deliver. And you may be saying, okay, you told me it would deliver this, but could we also look at it delivering this? If we kind of rethought it a little bit or added a little something to it, could we do that? So the way you're going to use this, though, is for the purpose of giving direction to your advocates and giving directions to your staff. And in terms of what you want to see when these projects are kind of coming across your desk. And if you want to include the things that have already happened, the advocates, that might be helpful for them, because they would be going back to the decision makers and going, look, this is stuff we've already delivered, and now we need to do X to push the ball even further. So does that help, Barbara? Does that answer your question? And you are on mute now.
I'm on mute. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you. That does, because I think that where we're at with this one, and please staff jump in, is that we did accomplish some with the money that we received. However, there's still some other phases to do and money to seek with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe what we can do. Yeah. Is go ahead, and if there are some things, so I'll just look to staff. What category did you put this in to begin with? So when we go back to your priorities, where did you put this project in your priorities? Was this the mandatory, desirable? What was it in your own list? That's to Don or Eric.
Well, I think I'd have to go back and look. Well, we had a funding obligation because we had pre-existing funding agreements. So it became one of those, well, you have to do it. So I think it was maybe not mandatory, but necessary, because there wasn't like a violation or anything like that, but it was a necessary project because of our funding agreements.
Mhm.
And then since we've completed that phase, now we need additional funding, and we don't necessarily have an outstanding obligation. However, the board's made it a high priority, and we have residents and members of the community that consider it an extremely high priority. So how the board and it translates that into all these compartments, is a good exercise to go through this.
Okay. So right now, it sounds like based on the way staff would look at it, it sounds like it would be a recommended project. However, that might be something the board would want to push up. Okay. All right.
Because we're just starting to learn how to do this exercise. I agree, this is interesting. So, but would it not also, it does provide some health and safety by way of improved water quality, easier to treat from a consumption standpoint, safety, the capacity, the increased capacities there for fire flow, for helicopter dipping. I think from an environmental standpoint, it has improved the aesthetics of the lake. Similarly with, I guess, the culture and enrichment, I mean, it just simply is it's an improved environment. So I don't know if I'm hitting the marks or not.
You are. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
All right.
Okay. Let's keep going. Okay. Who else wants? Go ahead, Barbara, please.
Well, first I wanted to read something that was in this weekender's paper, and it happened 95 years ago on Phoenix Lake. 95 years ago, 1925, development is being completed on Phoenix Lake. Light has been installed, excavating completed for the swimming hole, road improvements made, and the playground and campgrounds provided with apparatus necessary to their uses. The temporary wiring of the ground will soon be supplemented with permanent lines. And then it goes on. But at any rate, the history of this lake is something that's always enchanted our community. My parents camped there. I'm sure a lot of folks can remember. And so this has that component. It's a good example of a project that can get rid of the odor and the algae bloom and the shallowness and the warm water. I mean, so it's definitely health and safety aspect, but then there's also a public access component that hasn't been realized yet. Is there, but public access was one, and wildlife viewing for our kids. That was another. We have a report from a consultant called Horizons, and these are really mapped out in that report. And the other thing we have, and then I'll be quiet, is the Phoenix Lake Wetland Preserve. And this says wildlife and habitat values are of great importance, not only to the land trust that took over the easement, but to the state of California and the people of the United States. So they do consider this waters or feeding waters of the United States. So it has an environmental value as well.
That also creates some additional regulatory issues. This does. Okay. All right. Who wants to add to this?
I would just say, I'm sorry, Lisa, if you'd like to go.
Just a real quick one, and I'm not sure what category it would go under, but I think the increased capacity of water storage for our system's overall use and drought resiliency and stuff like that, I think is a big, for me, is the restoring the full capacity of Phoenix Lake.
Yeah.
And Don mentioned all of the benefits of that, having to do with how the lake functions as with the water quality and movement of the water.
Okay. This David, did you want to jump in?
Sure. The question for Barbara. Has Phoenix Lake always been private, or is it at one point in time had public access for the swimming pools that you'd mentioned?
And Jeff chimed in, but I believe it had public access. It had it like a little dance hall or something too.
So a little bit more kind of a resorty kind of thing.
Yeah, I did at one time, but I apologize. I don't know the history of that component of Phoenix Lake. I just don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
It seems kind of interesting that if at one point in time there was public access to, Phoenix Lake and the area there, how was it changed, or how did it change? Could be a question. I think you're on track. Director Murphy, I'm not sure that Phoenix Lake actually gives as much drought and climate change resistance. Certainly it would be improved for water quality issues, and that to actually qualify as a drought resistant, I think we'd actually have to have carryover storage component to a much larger reservoir, or a combination of reservoirs.
Does staff know the answer to that?
Yeah, please.
Well, I guess the direct answer is Director Boatwright's pretty close, that it doesn't provide us a lot of storage, because it's usually maintained at a full level, and we don't use the storage. However, if we ran into a drought, or most importantly, if we ran into an emergency, a wildfire that destroyed the upstream flume, then Phoenix Lake is the water supply for a month or 2 months to sustain the community and the business commercial district of our county. So it's really, really important storage in an emergency, but on a year-to-year basis, it's mostly a flow in, flow out, except for when there's maintenance being done, like will occur here in the next few weeks with PG&E. We will draw down Phoenix Lake to get through that 1 week outage.
And can I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
And to Eric, is it? It's my understanding, and I'm not sure that I have this right, that the capacity of the in the original proposal for Phoenix Lake, it sounded like we were trying to dredge out about 2/3 more than we did. With that expanded capacity, in my mind, that was for those emergency situations where we are relying on water storage within our system. I assumed that meant that we would have more storage within the system. And I think you hit on that a minute ago with the fire and piece. But the size of the reservoir, currently the amount of water it can hold, is it true it's about 1/3 of what if it was fully dredged out, it could hold?
This does get confusing. You are right that there was like 2/3 more dredging that we wanted to occur. And so if you just look at it that way, we should realize more storage volume if we had dredged more. Absolutely. The amount that was proposed to be dredged in relation to the overall volume of the lake it would require us to kind of look at the numbers. But if we could realize another, say, 100 acre-feet of storage through increased dredging, that would be great. 100 acre-feet is probably in the neighborhood of another 160,000 yards, which would get us closer to our original project goal. It wouldn't be there, like you said. There's 2/3 that wasn't. But I guess to answer your question is, Phoenix Lake is just it's a bit of a strange storage asset, because the ability to get water through the lake is constrained by the elevation of the outlet tower. So we really only are able to utilize a certain portion of that lake on the top. And then we would have to install a pump system that we don't currently have installed. And so we say, oh, in an emergency, we would figure out a way to get every last drop of water out of that. It would be tremendously valuable. But on a year-to-year basis, we're only operating on here. So if we dredge below that amount, it doesn't help us on a year-to-year basis. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Can I add something here too that may or may not be helpful to the general staff here? We understand these volumes and these numbers easily, but I'm not sure it's well understood by everybody else. So let me just give you what I'm talking about. So if you just take an average day for the Sonora water treatment plant, they're going to produce about 10,000 gallons, 10 acres of potable water per day on average, right? 365 days, that's 3,600 acre-feet of water produced just for potable drinking purposes out of the Sonora water treatment plant. Whereas the reservoir itself, I think, only holds 600 acre-feet of water in storage. So I know those numbers are not, in our vernacular, we use them every day. So I just want to make sure we all kind of understood that. And besides the Sonora water treatment plant, there are other downstream users, raw, ag, environmental uses of water also that comes out of that, in and out of that reservoir as well. So thank you.
Eric, question for you. Is there a regulatory environmental reserve pool on Phoenix Lake?
That's a great question. I'm not aware of one, but when I say we would try to get every last drop out, we obviously couldn't do that. You're entirely correct. We would have to leave a refuge pool for fish, and we would have to consult Fish and Wildlife. So again, the storage volume, especially if it's serving multiple uses, environmental, ecological, social, all that, it will be constrained. And I'm not trying to belittle the value of the project because it has all these multiple benefits, but from a storage asset perspective, I just want everyone to be aware that it is marginal. It's still very important, but it's mostly important in an emergency, which could happen at any time, unfortunately.
I'll highlight that. Okay. So this list is important to you. This project's important to you. Do you feel that what we've lined out here is telling your story that would explain to other people why this is important?
I have got a couple of comments, if you don't mind.
Please do.
So I'll just real quickly say this project has been in the works for years. And I don't want to get into all the gory details, but it's really a disappointment that it's not totally complete. So I'm going to leave that right where it's at, except that if we do, we, meaning TUD, can acquire, when TUD acquires PG&E infrastructure and the water rights, we will be sending water down to the Phoenix Lake powerhouse, which, as Don Perkins has said, empties into Phoenix Lake. So there could be an increased amount of water because we're going to want to try and make that thing at least break even cost-wise. I don't know whether we'll be able to do it, but that will be one of our goals, I'm sure. Excuse me. And it also will allow us to follow through on a promise that we made in an agreement to the tribe, the Tuolumne tribe, for their golf course if we cannot supply them with enough reclaimed water from quartz for their golf course. That's in the agreement. Then we send them raw water, and that raw water will come from Phoenix Lake. The other thing is, if we have increased flows coming down the main canal through that powerhouse, we have measuring stations at Phoenix Lake Dam, or in that area, and at Don Pedro. It can be measured as to how much water actually is being put from our water into Don Pedro, and that has a possible benefit of being able to offset the cost to TUD, the ratepayers, for this acquisition of PG&E.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to add to this project?
I'll just say one thing. If I may, the Horizon report, I believe, has some additional information as to the cultural enrichment and the economy and the environment. And so we may want to round this out with some of those things. So I would kind of
what's the name of the report?
Horizon, right, Eric? Horizon Consultants?
Yes, that's correct. The
Phoenix their
Lake,
name?
Yep, Phoenix Lake Preservation and Restoration Plan.
Yeah. And I have a question for Eric before we move on from this one. If we were to get more grant money, is there additional dredging that Fish and Wildlife would approve of us doing? I mean, you know, of course we have to work around their constraints, but could the water quality and fire flow benefit from additional dredging?
Yes, absolutely. We have permits that are still, have not expired, I should say, and our original permit applications included a broader scope that included dredging in other areas of the lake that we were unable to afford. So, and it would help the water quality, which helps wildlife, helps fish aquatic habitat, helps the treatment plant, obviously, and would be a value for fire protection and, you know, access by CAL FIRE helicopters. I think, you know, President Balin's right. There's a lot of other advantages that are really well articulated in that Horizon report that we could populate this table with more. But, you know, the ones that we're showing are really the ones that come to mind, but there are others as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And once again, the goal here is just to kind of create a picture so you all can make decisions about how you want to prioritize. So we want to just make sure we've got enough here that really tells the story about what you get with this. And I'm appreciative of the comment that Don said about it's taking forever. So there's a little bit of a mix of emotions on that one. Okay. So Barbara, do you want to tell me what project to do next? And then I'll ask the others after you, and we're just going to keep working on this for another, I need to go to about, I think we're starting to pull out some priorities already, but I need to leave about 20 minutes at the end just to make sure we nail these down. So what project should we do? Would you all like to talk about next?
I'm fine. I'm fine just going down the list.
Okay. So someone, I don't have it in front of me, so somebody tell me.
Oh, okay, so it would be, all right, so, the Sea Pines Water Facility Consolidation, Sierra Pines up in Twain Harte.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, who wants to start? Is there anything good about that project, Don?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what it is.
Start. Well, again, one of the bigger priorities up till now for many years for the district is, among other things, consolidation of facilities to make them more reliable, make them more efficient. Efficiency translates to economy, money saved. What's special about the Sierra Pines treatment plant, and anybody jump in and just say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. So I think in this case, there are impacts to the environment. I mean, we're moving into a beautiful area, with lots of history. And so, we are gonna be impacting the environment, but I think we're doing it in such a way that it can enhance the environment. And so that's where I'm at. I'm sure there's other people who'd like to chime in there.
Tell me what that means. So what you just said, that it will also enhance the environment, even though you'll need to mitigate.
Right.
So
Probably
how will it enhance it?
Yeah, I'll give you my spin on it, and let's see if Eric or anybody else can chime in. So currently, there are some wetlands there, right, that we have to protect and preserve, but we do plan to introduce there. What's not there now is a storage reservoir, right? Hopefully as much as 30 acres of stored water on this side of the flume. And hopefully that's an opportunity for us to enhance the environment there, make it better, right? Just from the creatures and the environment and or people, for recreation and things of that nature. Like I said, I'm sure there's other people that would like to chime in there and see.
All right. So is Don the only person that likes this project? Go ahead, Eric. You're going to defend it.
Well, I love this project, and not just from an engineering perspective and only the district, but we've taken a number of consultants out on that site. And if anyone has been on that site, it's just a beautiful piece of land. I mean, it's at a location and elevation. It has the wetlands. It is, surrounded by pines, and right at the confluence of where the Tuolumne Main Canal climbs out of the canyon and then gets distributed to TUD's ditch system. And it has the historic component to it with a flume running right through. I mean, it's just a beautiful site. And I feel like this project, aside from just all the concrete benefits that we can justify, it has the potential to be a sort of game changer for this district. If we want to expand our exposure and sort of put a new face on this district, almost like an opportunity to rebrand TUD. I'm not saying that we need to, but I'm just saying when you look at our facilities, most of them are old. We have a very nice office complex, but aside from that, when you go around the community, you look at our pump stations, you look at our treatment facilities, they're old. And our staff does a great job maintaining them, but we could establish a multiple use facility on Sierra Pines that blends architecturally, blends environmentally, has the recreational component to it, that people, when they go out to the site, they see TUD in a different light. And so this project has so many, potential win-wins for the community and for the district, and I think could be a real game changer going forward on how the community thinks about TUD. And so that's one thing, but it has, the health and safety aspects of reliability and resiliency. It's high up in the watershed. So the water quality is better. It also is at an elevation that allows us to maximize gravity flow downstream, and gravity flow translates to no need for PG&E power, as President Balin had, expressed interest, is to make ourselves a little more independent of the need for electricity. It does, on the environmental side, it has the wetland protection, but at the same time, it has the cultural enrichment, because you have environment and historical, cultural all in one site. So we could do great. We have boardwalks that could be built, and water features that people could recreate around, and at the same time make it an educational, type of site. So, and then the economic and fiscal, Don and I and Steve and Abby, that's pretty easy for us. It's all the other ones that I think we need to really flesh out so we can get funding for the project, because the state will understand the economic side. Consolidation is a huge priority at the state level, but they won't understand without us telling a good story about the beauty of this site, necessarily about the cultural enrichment and some of the environmental aspects.
Yeah, you're right. Any kind of consolidation, state board and everybody else really likes that.
We do have Director Murphy's hand up and also Director Kern's hand up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So who is first?
Director Murphy.
Thank you, Director Murphy.
Hi, thank you. So when I look at this project, and when we've been hearing about it from both Donna and Eric, I think the primary thing is this economic and fiscal piece, that the consolidation, that we save a lot on not having to upkeep older facilities, and being able to just consolidate this into one good location. I really think we're hard pressed to say that we're improving at the public meeting, and what's been put out to the public is that that TUD doesn't do recreation, and that we're not guaranteeing that there will be any of those recreational enhancements there. And right now that area is already a favorite place for people to recreate. It's been a disc golf course, and it's been, and a lot of people walk, and it's already being used for recreation. It's already beautiful. And by putting a TUD facility there, I don't think it increases the beauty. So the Frisbee golf is historic. It's not currently there. So it has been. But people have used this as an open recreational area. And so I think I just don't want to see us get into the same situation that we got it, that, TUD got in with the Phoenix Lake thing, where people were expecting a lot of public access and recreation, and that wasn't the priority of the project, and wasn't what the end product was. And so if we are able to get grant funding because of adding that piece, where that funding then becomes available to directly do that, I think it would be a TUD priority. But what I've been hearing, and Don and Eric, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what I've been hearing, even at the public meeting that was on site, is that there is no guarantee of any of that recreation piece. And so just tell me if I'm correct on that.
You're 100% correct. When we did the environmental and the public meetings, we emphasized that recreation was not necessarily a requirement. It was evaluated just to keep our options open. But I mean, I look to the board. This is really what does the board want staff to do, and it is a sensitive, use caution with this topic. You should, because the residents around that site already realize recreational benefit from the site. And I don't think inviting, many of them have expressed concerns about inviting more use of the site, sanctioned use. So it is sensitive.
And because of the security for the facility, there will be some restrictions on that. So am I correct that when we're looking for funding, if there was funding that wasn't otherwise available, because we linked it with recreation, that would then put recreation as if by broadening the scope to include recreation, we're able to make use of or get different funding, additional funding, then that would be a benefit to the district. And we would incorporate the recreation in that as more of a priority. That was a messy way of saying it.
I think you got it right. Eric's smiling. So, okay. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little repetitive here, but Mr. Perkins, in an earlier topic, he spoke about things that TUD has inherited, and one of those things is the mini treatment plants that we have, and this this project is a solution to eliminating many of those treatment plants and making us more efficient. It also goes to a long ways to the promise and not really the promise, but the goal of TUD on the economy side, that our core mission is to supply good potable water at the cheapest possible price, and this is one way to get there. On the recreation side, I'm certainly not against recreation, and if it's part of some kind of a funding grant that we have a recreation component, then I'm all for it. But it's a little bit of a slippery slope if we have to take on ongoing recreation costs and expect our ratepayers to pay for it when they're paying for water and sewer. That is a little bit of a rub for me. But if the ratepayers want to do that, then it's okay. But we are a water provider and sewer collector first.
And that's one of the things we talked about, where there's potential for partnerships too, where you all develop and somebody else operates, and that's not uncommon. Barbara, I see your hands up.
Yeah, and I think I said this earlier, while our core mission is essential to get accomplished, oftentimes it's just, I'll just say this, the recreational component has been discretionary in just about everything that we do. And I think it's time that we actually make it mandatory as part of our mission, because the funding wants to see that is, like it or not. We also have managed dispersed recreation. So we're telling the state, we're telling the Forest Service, we're telling FERC how we value our water here, that we don't just want to send it out of our county as fast as possible. And so I think a mandatory recreational component that is using other people's money for this, we are giving back to the community, and that supports the community. And I think it's important, if we want support from the community, then we need to support the community. And if we achieve our core, the efficiency, if we can achieve that, but also come through for what we say we're going to do in a grant for the community, then it's just really a win-win. And we're not paying for it, then why not? It's a win-win.
So what I did was I put this as a future board talk, because I can't resolve this today, is whether or not you incorporate that into your mission. But in terms of your existing things. This is sort of this value add kind of thing, and we can put a caveat on it. You know, in cost effective kind of community supported kind of thing, which leads, I think, to what Lisa said about the caution. David, did you want to add something?
Yes, please. Thank you. You know, one of the things, I'm going to add a little bit of, you know, Donald, like this, a little bit of turbidity to the water here. You know, because we have two major water treatment plant projects potentially moving forward. And certainly I would hope that the finances work out to afford both. But which Sierra Pines or Sonora, as far as if you had to put one on top, one above the other as far as getting done, and I realize we've got a lot of work moving forward on this, to just kind of put it on a pause would be, it'd be hard to do, but what would be the bigger bang for our buck? A new Sonora water treatment plant or the Sierra Pines in relation to how soon other infrastructure would fail, the consolidation ease of you know, operating one treatment plant versus the 5 that get immediately consolidated. It just kind of, you know, where would we be on that?
Mm-hmm. So let's do this. I'm going to put that question here. Why don't we do Sonora next, and then we can compare them.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Good call. All right. Anybody else want to
Director
speak?
Reagan had his hand up too.
I'm sorry, I can't see the hand, so please tell me.
Director Reagan.
Oh, please. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to belabor the recreational part, but I just want to say this, that as members of the TUD organization in one form or another, we better all pretty darn well get used to it, because if we take over PG&E assets, we're deep into recreation. So we might as well start working on it. That's number one. Number two, this project has been, I've been watching it for, I can't tell you how long, years. And actually, this is the one that I pushed real hard for probably 10, 12 years ago, to be the one and only water treatment plant that TUD would operate, because it could actually gravity flow to every portion of the TUD area for almost completely. So anyway, with that being said, originally I was a little hesitant on this. I mean, when it finally started, it looked like it was going to happen. But we do have a promise from CSDA for very desirable loan, and also a grant, I believe, which is going to help us hugely on building this. And the other thing that really has me saying that this definitely should go before the Sonora water treatment plant, although I wish we could do them both at the same time, is that there's a lot of what I was concerned about, the proper size transmission lines already in the ground in order to get the water to the areas where we can eliminate those other water treatment plants. It's going to save the TUD ratepayer a tremendous amount of money, and also with maintenance besides. So this is a win-win-win. It's huge.
Okay, that's pretty compelling stuff. Anyone else? We'll
Director Murphy does have her.
Okay.
Director Murphy has her hand up.
Thank you.
Just from the economic side of things too, right? In the environmental reports have already been done on Sierra Pines, and there's right at this point, then there's a clock ticking on how long those ones are are good for.
Mhm.
Is that Don, Eric, is that accurate? And for the other, we haven't started that process, correct?
All of that's correct. Only clarification, it's a CEQA mitigated negative declaration, not an EIR. But
Okay.
yes, there's a shelf life on it, and we have not started the environmental on the replacement for the Sonora water treatment plant.
And what's the shelf life on the CEQA?
Industry standards about 5 years.
And that clock started ticking at what point?
We filed the notice of determination just a few weeks ago after the board adopted the mitigated, the MMRP for the project.
And that's to begin construction or to have completed construction?
The 5 years is really in order for us to start getting permits and secure funding. So it's very likely we'll have to do an addendum to the environmental documents, which won't be that hard, but it's very likely an extension and an addendum because, I mean, unless we can secure funding and start construction in 5 years, we would love to. We're pushing as hard as we can, and we just don't know.
Yeah, and with that, no, I'm just trying to clarify things as far as timelines on things. And so the 5 years, the CEQA is for takes you to beginning construction. It doesn't have to take you to the end of construction.
Beginning construction.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, good call on that, Lisa, because that just that kind of the get to shovel kind of thing. Does this position you also differently? It sounds like this would position you differently for any potential infrastructure money. I'm guessing. Yeah. So I'll put a double star on that. Okay. All right. I don't want to run out of time. So do you want to look at Sonora right now? Or do you all want to spend more time on this one? Just need advice. You're in charge.
I think because this one is further down the line, that I would be inclined to have this be a priority over trying to catch the other one up to this point.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Okay. What project would you like to look at next, the group? Does anyone have a preference for another project they want to look at? And I have about 10 minutes for this, so. Anything else on your list? Go ahead, Ron.
I'd like to suggest, and I don't know what the rest of my fellow board members think, but I think the Sonora Water Treatment Facility consolidation project needs to be discussed and in depth, but I would really like to suggest that the board goes on a tour of the existing Sonora water treatment plant first, so that we see what we're faced with there, and then have a discussion on the Sonora, the new one, so that we get it right. By then we will be educated, because I think there's some board members that don't have any idea of what actually is there at the existing site. And I have an advantage that I visited it many times over the years, and I think a tour by Don Perkins for the board would be awesome before we discussed it.
Mm-hmm. Barbara?
I agree, Ron. I think that's
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Okay, Barbara?
I just wanted to chime in and say, I think that we've made an offer on, or that we're in negotiations to purchase this property, but I think what we can talk about, since we're pretty clear that we want to upgrade and expand and relocate the Sonora one, is talk about that, because if we're starting to get into the habit of looking at the environment and the economy and the cultural enrichment, then this gives us an opportunity to at least envision what we want to see on this site. And I'll just start it off is in terms of sustainability, I just don't think it's right any longer, if you will, because of global warming, to create huge hot asphalt heat islands, you know, where you take all the blue oaks down and then you just make this big heat sink. And I know Caltrans is trying away from all that as well. And one of the things that Eric had mentioned on the site, what makes it desirable is that our raw water facility, gravity fed, is running right through this piece of ground, which I think is an excellent opportunity to then be able to think in terms of health and safety or cultural enrichment or the environment, which is to not only focus on reducing our footprint there as best we can, and I'm talking as little asphalt and drought resistant vegetation, canopy cover to reduce the climate, so that we address climate mitigation and greenhouse gas sequestration as we're looking at this design as we move forward. Before we've even adopted a design, that we incorporate the ditch maybe as a cooling agent in that environment, and certainly not only water delivery, but also for a dry barrel hydrant or fire water drop point for that part of the community. And again, we support the community and they see that, and you know, they'll support us. So I just want us to be really looking at this, these 5 categories, even before we go into design.
I see Lisa has her hand up, and then I just need to check on a process question. So Lisa, go ahead.
I would add to on the climate mitigation piece of the I think any of these facilities that we can do solar, or we had talked about micro hydro and things like that in line. Anything that we can do to provide our own electricity for the operations that we're doing on site. I would like to see us considering those pieces. And my thought is also in the next couple of years, that may be a bonus in finding funding for that part as well.
Director Boatwright has his hand up.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple more things to the new Sonora water treatment plant. You know, it has a reliability component. Obviously, this project is to replace a very old water treatment plant. Environmental wise, you know, the proposed new property, negotiations are successful. It doesn't have quite as much of a environmentally sensitive site as a Sierra Pines. So some of our surveys may be a little bit easier. Certainly the new technologies for treating water at both facilities will make an ease of operation and be a little bit more fiscally efficient. Certainly upsizing, you know, these treatment plants and consolidation of our operation is also another economic impact. You know, perhaps even reduced or less, you know, manpower needed. Certainly a reduction in our maintenance costs for the short term.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you know, and I do have, you know, a positive wanting to move forward on both of these water treatment plants. It just you know, in the overall financial scheme, or could we afford it? Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, was someone speaking?
If the board's done, I'll just chime in. This has been great, and I got to tell you, it just warms my heart to know that the last couple of months or so we've been have sustained conversations, sustained involvement, engagement on these high priorities. This is long time overdue, and it just feels really good that we're talking about. And I know you only have a little bit of time, Lisa, but I'll try to quickly answer David's question from a few moments ago on, you know, Sonora or Sierra Pines. And this is a great question. I love the question. They both have implications. On one hand, the new Sierra Pines and total consolidation would result in dramatic savings to our ratepayers. That money can then be reallocated to a new Sonora almost instantly. On the other hand, the Sonora treatment plant, it has, you know, it's such a dire need. It's in dire straits, and it serves such an important populace. Downtown Sonora, all the way to Jamestown, the hospital, and so on. So it's a group effort. The collectively, board and staff are going to come to this decision collectively, and I'll support either one. You can't go wrong. If we only can do one, whichever one we do will be the right answer, in my opinion.
Okay, great, thank you. I want to make sure, are there any other projects on the list? Because I'm mindful of getting you out on time. Are there any other projects on the list we should talk about? And I can switch pages to go back if you want me to.
Lisa? They're all important, every single one of them. I don't think this was a one morning meeting, get it done, do it all type thing. This is going to be ongoing for some time. Just my opinion.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And once again, the main thing here, and it sounds like this is already happening, is we want to make sure that we give those advocates that you have some immediate direction, because they need to start working tomorrow, right? And then staff also in this sort of triage space needs to make decisions as well. So I believe everything that made it on your list that you're looking at were already things that staff thought were important. They wouldn't have been on the list if they didn't think so. So I don't think there's any question about that. This is really more about the triaging. And you don't need me, obviously, to have these conversations now that you've kind of had a chance to work through them yourself. These are all things you can continue talking about. Barbara, do you want to jump in?
Yes. Yeah, this is really great. This is a great declination, Lisa. And I was wondering if it would be possible for staff and board to get a copy of these little worksheets. Would that be possible to do, so that when we do a project like fire, water, so we can continue this process now that you've launched us? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing I'm going to be doing from after this meeting, and that's why I asked Kirsten to be here, and you didn't get a chance to meet her. Maybe she'll turn on her camera and wave at you, but she's a great note taker, and she partners with me on a lot of projects. So she's going to know the things that we want to roll up, so we can give it back to you, so you can use it. We want to have something that you can take and give to your advocates, as well as you have your leadership here, but if they want to have a staff meeting or something like this, this will be something that they can share. And it's also something you could put on a website if you wanted to help the public understand a little bit more about your deliberations. So that's sort of my next step on this, is to do that. But absolutely happy to do that. Is there any other project though on that list that you all want to do a little bit more of a deep dive on? And then I've got to swirl back and we've already got 3 things that we've triaged as critical path. And then we've got a couple other things here that we've been talking about that we all agree are important. And in a perfect world, the team is going to try to focus on getting them done. Sort of regardless. I mean, there are things in process, but any other projects you guys want to deep dive into? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, forgot to raise my hand electronically. We may not have time for this today because I know you want to reserve some time to wrap up, but there are more projects like the tribal, the tribal partnerships for fire water infrastructure, and that includes our fire water draft points, and then this another one I think is important is to finish up the Tuolumne Ditch System Sustainability Project. That only got about 50% done, and we don't have to go into these now, but it would be a future exercise, and I'm sure others can think of other projects too. Yeah, it's called Tuolumne Ditch System Sustainability Project. System Sustainability Project, yeah. Okay. And that would fit into this exercise. Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to add something to this list? Okay. Well, all right. So why don't we swirl back again and talk about where we left it, some initial priorities, and then next steps. So we've got some more we haven't driven into here. So I'm going to switch screens again. Okay, so what we just talked about was we've got our list that we've started, and we've identified some priorities here. We've got, this was a 1, this was a 1, and this was a 1, this top 3 ranks. Okay, based on what you're seeing here, and I'm going to add that ditch system piece here that we need to do more work on. Okay, is there a second?
Director Reagan has his hand up for a comment.
Go ahead, please.
I may be mistaken, but I thought the tribal partnerships for fire water infrastructure was also number 1 because we need that for the water needs assessment.
Okay. Okay. Does everybody agree with that? Any disagreement with that? What is, Don, what are the other dependencies, or I'm sorry, Ron, what are the other dependencies for the water assessment?
I think that President Balin could probably answer that the most concise and best way. We need this water assessment thing in order to move forward to get our agreement of the water out of New Melones. And it was stalled, and on purpose apparently, which is unfortunate, but we need to get it done now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, anybody else on this one? All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead. We can go, let me check with staff. How much, so you've got some these kind of big ticket items on the plate right now. How helpful will it be to you for me to try to triage the rest of this? And I need some feedback from you, or do you feel like even just having this conversation is giving you enough direction?
This feedback has been great. I don't know that I can contribute any more to this. I think the direction is becoming pretty clear. It was really clear before, but it's only more clear now as far as the priorities, the direction. I just wanted to, to assure Director Ringen that the water needs assessment is currently actively being worked on. We are on it.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Great.
Lisa, are you looking for, and these are orders of priority, not
Yeah.
prioritization
Yes.
criteria,
Yes.
numbers that we're looking at?
Yeah.
You need numbers in for the rest of these?
I'm just trying to, so what I've heard is from staff is that either one of these, the water treatment consolidation, are good projects. It sounded to me like those were kind of a probably second tier, and it sounded like there was a slight preference for Sierra Pines water if there had to be a choice. But that's kind of what I'm asking. I'm also looking to staff and asking them how much direction they need. So could you add to that, David? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Don and Eric, would it help you to put a priority over either one based on what you guys are looking at and knowing what the advocates are looking at?
I think that, like Don said, that the direction's fairly clear. I mean, the fact that these are on our list means that they're up there. They're high priorities, and we have to be able to walk and chew gum, and at the same time, and so we will be working in parallel on all of these. But when it comes down to making a hard decision, your number ones, the board's number ones, will win out on a day-to-day basis. But we will certainly be working on all of these. Just as Dawn mentioned, the water needs assessment is very active, even though it may not be the number one. It is associated with the USBR, which is a number one. So no, I think we have pretty good marching orders at this point, and it's been a real productive discussion.
Okay.
And if I could add real quick, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I didn't get Eric or Abby or Steve or anybody else's permission to say this, but I feel really good about our bandwidth to actively work on all of these. On every day, I'm going to pick up these things and do something with them. I just think we have the bandwidth. I went out on a limb and speaking for Eric and Abby and Steve and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I heard a couple of other things, and some of the other things that I heard was there's a real interest in actively looking at this concept of Project Plus. And especially when Don and Eric, you jumped in and said, I would like to think about these projects in bigger ways. And there are benefits to doing that in terms of building the advocates and building potential funding sources and partners that could come to the table. So that sounds like an important board through line on that. And board, please listen, I'm repeating back what I've heard. So please correct me if I didn't get this right. The other thing that I heard is there's a real interest at paying a lot of attention to sort of climate resilient, net zero, good stewardship. So when we're looking at projects to, the board loves gravity fed. The board really wants to look at when we can get an energy savings. The board really wants to look at how we can have a minimal footprint in any of the work that we're going to do. And so that is a priority of board direction to pay attention to that. I also heard that, ratepayers are pretty darn important, and we need to make sure that as an agency that we are being good stewards of funds, and every decision is really showing a good, thoughtful ROI, return on investment. There's a lot more understanding now about how sort of the approach sort of minimal footprint, net zero kinds of things actually are probably long-term more cost effective. So there's not a tension like there used to be in the olden days. There used to be a tension between a certain style of a project versus actual cost. And I think that technology and a lot of other things are improving that equation. So those are some very, very big ticket items that I heard came out of this board conversation. We've also had a really good conversation about some of the key projects that you are going to be proceeding with. I'm going to stop. I want to take a minute to let everybody just kind of offer their own thoughts, correct anything I said, and just kind of go from there. So if you don't mind, David, I see your mic's open. Would you mind jumping in?
Oh, I didn't realize my mic was still open.
Oh, no, that's why I called on you.
No, I think this is on track. You know, like I said, with the 2 water treatment plants, you know, it just kind of, they're both really good and they both need to move forward. So it's kind of which one would be a priority to do first, and, you know, all that. And I realize that, you know, work has started in different places and all that. No, I think this has been good. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, the one thing I don't see on the project list, and maybe we're just talking about the raw water and municipal water system, but the sewer treatment plant is a massive project that's going on right now as well. What's the official name for it, guys? Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant, is that correct?
Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility, and then I think the board will eventually consider what it officially wants, the sign and the name, but the project title right now is Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility.
Okay, great.
Lisa, what was the question on that?
My question is, did I get it right when I repeated back what I heard you all say? And any other last thoughts you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Okay.
I think I heard you say it, but with that solar power infrastructure, just the anything that we can do with the micro hydro or anything we can do to look at sustainable energy on site at the projects that we're putting forward.
Director Murphy, I have a question for you on that. In your mind, when you're thinking that way, are you also including in your mind the reduction of existing power consumption that we do on a day-to-day basis in that, or in addition to that? I'm sure it is in addition to that.
Addition. Yeah. Anything that we can do to kind of, because the words that I would use that I didn't use before were just kind of looking towards that net zero of whatever we can do to be more efficient and more sustainable into the future. That's going to help us out in the long run, as far as both cost effectiveness and just being more environmentally sustainable as well.
And I did put the net zero on the worksheets too, so you
Awesome.
have it in your notes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I think that the footprint piece too, of just that to not get stuck in the mind fret. I mean, I know that was Barb Balin had brought that up, but like just kind of the permeable versus impermeable surfaces of where we can do permeable. That helps with the heat and the water and everything.
Yeah, so that's really just good design features. And that's that great thing when you start doing that wheel, it really help you think about how do I get a better benefit there. So super, thank you. All right, I want to just work through, Barbara, I was going to have you close. So let me just check in real quick with Jeff. Last thoughts, corrections, additions.
Yeah, I'm happy with the prioritization we got here, and I too agree with the Sierra Pines being slightly ahead of the Sonora treatment plant. I'm satisfied with that. So that's all I have to say, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, this probably should be answered by President Balin, but you have down as one of the items ditch system. It really doesn't. It's an overall evaluation and finishing of what was started but then dropped years ago. So maybe President Balin can come up with a proper wording for that, but it just having ditch system there seems to me to be a little vague.
Yeah, we'll clean that up. What did you think about everything else? Are you happy with the prioritization? Are you happy with my summary?
Oh, absolutely. I think this morning has been really helpful, and it's been great to talk out all these various aspects, and I'm really looking forward to the board and staff and everyone working together, and then giving the our consultants and so on a good roadmap of what we feel just has to get done. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Barbara, I'm going to turn this over to you. It's your meeting again. So feel free to make any closing comments or tell me to write something, whatever it is you want to do to wrap this thing up.
Lisa, I can't thank you enough. You make facilitating look really easy, and it's really hard. So I appreciate this layout that you've done and working with staff. I appreciate staff, working with you and giving them, giving you the tiers. And then this exercise for us to see the whole, the whole enchilada is what's going to get us the funding. I know it's not as straightforward as it used to be, where we just went out, state, revolving fund and got money for a pipe. And, Aqua embraced the co-equal goals years and years ago as the way to get to where they need to go. And I just thank you so much for rearranging your schedule big time and facilitating us. This overlay and the way it helped us get our head around our priorities was really wonderful. And we can now go forward with this model and work with staff, like for an example, the ditch system, and it feeds directly into the FERC relicensing, or for the Phoenix, it's a direct tie into that. And so that would be really time. So at any rate, this is a great model. It's a great format, and it was a very valuable morning spent. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, but once again, it's your meeting. So
I'd like to continue with this.
Well, probably people will be better when they're not hungry. As a facilitator, that's just a pro tip. Just to make sure people get a break and have lunch.
I think the best compliment I can pay you is you made 3 hours go by really fast. I mean, this board and staff can attest to 3 hours can really drag. So this went by really fast.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Well, any public comment, Corey?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, so well, that would conclude any public chiming in on this. So let's see. I'll get my I have to find my agenda. Here we go. Board or staff, is there anything else that you would like to comment, process, or on the workshop in general before we adjourn the meeting?
Real brief, I will say that I too enjoyed this. Again, I appreciate the conversation. I definitely appreciate your time and your commitment. 3 hours and 5 minutes and counting. I know how valuable your time is, but it's important and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, well, again, our thanks and thank you to staff, Abby, Eric, Don, for stepping up. That was wonderful and I appreciate it. And I wish Steve could have made it today too. So if there are no other further comments, then we will adjourn today's special board meeting. Thank you.
Everybody have a good afternoon.
You too. We'll see you.
Okay.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Kirsten. She's waving now.